Do you remember John McCallum? He was a lifer with the Liberal Party, a cabinet minister, and then Justin Trudeau appointed him as Canada's ambassador to China. On his watch, Canada-China relations hit a new low. China's spying in Canada reached a new high. China had illegal boycotts of Canadian agricultural goods, and of course, the worst of all was China's straight-up arrest of two Canadian civilians, Michael Kovrig and Michael Spavor, who have been held under abusive conditions for nearly 2 years now. None of this seemed to faze McCallum, who actually insisted that Canada had more in common with communist China than the United States. He actually said that. That's not a joke. He was supposed to be Canada's ambassador to China, but usually it felt like the other way around. In a startling press conference, McCallum called for the release of the alleged Chinese fraudster Meng Wanzhou, a Huawei executive fighting extradition to the United States. It was shocking enough for him to interfere in the court system as an agent of the government, but that's how they do it in communist China. He might have been taking notes.
Only news outlets with a primarily Chinese audience were invited to the ambassador's Q&A session. Over 40 minutes, John McCallum advocated for Meng Wanzhou's release, along with the two detained Canadians.
Well, my hope is that that will be the outcome, but it is not something that I necessarily control.
But to take China's side against us, well, that's unbelievable. And even Justin Trudeau knew that McCallum had to be fired.
Breaking news from Ottawa this hour. John McCallum, one of the Prime Minister's most experienced Liberal allies, has resigned as Canada's ambassador to China. McCallum, a former cabinet minister, got into hot water with Justin Trudeau for remarks he made this week about the case of Meng Wanzhou.
But it didn't really matter to McCallum because he already solidified his business connections in the communist dictatorship. McCallum pivoted to work for the Wailian Group, a company that specializes in getting Chinese oligarchs' children access to citizenship and study in Western countries.
Wailian Overseas Consulting Group is China's leading immigration company, specializing in investor immigration programs.
Can you think of a more perfect job for a corrupt Trudeau Liberal than that? I can't think of any. Well, here's where it gets interesting. It appears that in McCallum's rush to please his Chinese masters, he might have broken Canadian law. See, McCallum bragged in a speech to the Wailian Group that he had an exclusive conversation with his old cabinet pal, the current Minister of Immigration and Citizenship. And the results of that conversation convinced him that the Canadian government's policy was favorable to the position of the Chinese firm. That, folks, is what you call lobbying. It's not something that you can do, and it's not something that I can do, in part because you and I are not registered lobbyists, but also because being able to get the ear of senior cabinet ministers is not a casual affair. He was only able to do it because he is a Liberal insider, given access that nobody else gets. Unfortunately for McCallum, there's a 5-year moratorium on lobbying when you leave the cabinet table, but he actually just didn't care.
Now, despite both John McCallum and the Minister of Immigration, Marco Mendicino, both
admitting to the exclusive conversation, the records came up empty when Rebel News filed an access to information request. Why would that be, do you think? It means that it was either scrubbed or the conversation took place Hillary Clinton style. No records because they knew that the conversation was illegal. Trudeau prorogued Parliament to avoid being investigated by the official opposition in light of the WE scandal. And that means any investigation into the Minister of Immigration and John McCallum, well, that is also impossible. But guess who Justin Trudeau can't prorogue? Me and my colleagues at Rebel News. Since nobody else is able to right now, Rebel News took it upon ourselves to hire a law firm to draft and file a comprehensive complaint with the Office of the Lobbying Commissioner. Our lawyer outlines in painstaking detail the comments made by McCallum that indicate that he used his connections to the Liberal government to advance the interests of his Chinese employer. It is clear, in my opinion, that McCallum is in breach of the Lobbying Act. He has demonstrated over and over, time and time again, in speeches delivered in Qingdao, Beijing, Suzhou, Shanghai, and Shenzhen, that he is willing to abuse connections and favors with his old Liberal pals for his personal financial benefit, as well as for the benefit of a company belonging to a hostile foreign power. Our letter has just been sent to the Lobbying Commissioner, and you can read every detail for yourself at www.chineselobbyist.com. And that's the part where you come in. After you read this document, I need your help. It cost us about $5,000 to have top-notch lawyers research, draft, and send this official complaint to the Office of the Lobbying Commissioner. If you pitch in to help us recoup this cost, we will be able to follow this scandal until it's fixed. It will also tell us that Canadians are actually interested in holding the Liberals' feet to the fire when they break the law. We just sent a similar letter to the CRA, in fact, about the We charity, and folks told us that they wanted more. If you want to help us out here, we can keep doing this every time the Liberals step out of line. The very next thing you do, please go to ChineseLobbyist.com, check it out, read the document, and pitch in a few bucks if you can.